At this point, there is an intermission while we're given greater insight into exactly how and why God will destroy the great city. The fate of the city seems to matter more than anything to God, and that's further evidence that it probably means Jerusalem. Remember, Zechariah 2:8 tells us that Jerusalem is God's most precious possession. One of the 7 angels who had poured out the 7 bowls came over and spoke to me. "Come with me," he said, "and I will show you the judgment that is going to come on the great prostitute who rules over many waters. The kings of the world have committed adultery with her, and the people who belong to this world have been made drunk by the wine of her immorality." So the angel took me in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and blasphemies against God were written all over it. The woman wore purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewelry made of gold and precious gems and pearls. In her hand she held a gold goblet full of obscenities and the impurities of her immorality. A mysterious name was written on her forehead: Babylon the Great, mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world. I could see that she was drunk with the blood of God's holy people who were witnesses for Jesus. I stared at her in complete amazement. "Why are you so amazed?" the angel asked. "I will tell you the mystery of this woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns on which she sits. The beast you saw was once alive but isn't now, and yet he will soon come up out of the bottomless pit and go to eternal destruction. And the people who belong to this world, whose names were not written in the book of life before the world was made, will be amazed at the reappearance of this beast who had died." This calls for a mind with understanding. The 7 heads of the beast represent the 7 hills where the woman rules. They also represent 7 kings. 5 kings have already fallen, the 6th now reigns, and the 7th is yet to come, but his reign will be brief. The scarlet beast that was, but is no longer, is the 8th king. He is like the other 7, and he too is headed for destruction. The 10 horns of the beast are 10 kings who have not yet risen to power. They will be appointed to their kingdoms for one brief moment to reign with the beast. They will all agree to give him their power and authority. Together they will go to war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will defeat them because he is the Lord of all lords and King of all kings, and his called and chosen and faithful ones will be with him. Then the angel said to me, "The waters where the prostitute is ruling represent masses of people of every nation and language. The scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute. They will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire. For God has put a plan into their minds, a plan that will carry out his purposes. They will agree to give their authority to the scarlet beast, and so the words of God will be fulfilled. And this woman you saw in your vision represents the great city that rules over the kings of the world." This is almost certainly the most difficult passage in Revelation to translate. Scholars have never managed to reach an agreement on what's going on here. So let's take it slowly. We're presented with an image of a prostitute or harlot, basically an unfaithful woman. Since a faithful woman always represents the bride of Christ, and since the bride of Christ is made up of 2 covenant peoples, that is Israel and the church, a prostitute is one who rightly belongs to him, but who has turned away to follow foreign gods or idols. If the church was still on earth at this time, and if the book of Revelation had been talking about the church in the surrounding chapters, then within that context we would look for a false church here, and that would point us towards Rome. However, since the book of Revelation has been increasingly zeroing in on Israel, and even more specifically on Jerusalem, and since we're told explicitly that this woman, this prostitute, is the great city, figuratively called Babylon, then we must once again entertain the idea that this city, this prostitute, is Jerusalem. There's a precedent for this. Through Isaiah, God said, "See how Jerusalem, once so faithful, has become a prostitute." Other cities are given the name. Nahum calls Nineveh a prostitute, and Isaiah again refers to Tyre as a prostitute, but none is so consistently referred to with this name than Jerusalem. Jeremiah calls Israel a prostitute. Ezekiel does likewise. Hosea does too. All of them talk in the context of a people who made a vow of commitment to God, but who broke those vows to follow other gods. We are told that this prostitute rules over many waters. Many waters refers to the multitudes of people in the earth. So this is a city where the Antichrist has headquartered his global rule. That points us towards Jerusalem. The woman is also referred to once again as the Great City, the one who rules over the kings of the world. Furthermore, we're told that this woman, this city, is the one that sits on 7 hills. Jerusalem sits on the 7 hills of Israel Scopus, Nob, Olivet, the Mount of Offense, Mount Zion, the Ophel Mount, and the new Mount Zion. We're also told that the kings of the world have committed adultery with her. We know that the rulers of the world will defer ultimate authority to the Antichrist reigning in Jerusalem as part of a one-world government. Indeed, this passage tells us they, the 10 rulers, will all agree to give him, that is the Antichrist, their power and authority. It seems the adultery that has exasperated God's patience with Israel is their willingness to become part of the one world order in the first place. When the Antichrist comes along, Israel will put her faith for safety in the Antichrist system rather than in God. Israel will make a peace treaty with the Antichrist for her future rather than entrusting it to God. Remember, Jesus said, "I am come in my Father's name, and you receive me not. If another shall come in his own name, him you will receive." Jesus seems to be saying that when I, your true Messiah, came glorifying God, you rejected me, but when the Antichrist comes glorifying himself, you will accept him. That's the prostitution that causes God to unleash his wrath on the city for the final 7 years. And when the Antichrist turns on Jerusalem, that is the prostitute, halfway into his reign, God will allow it to happen. He will only cut it short for the sake of his chosen ones. We're then told that this woman is sitting on a scarlet beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns, and blasphemies against God were written all over it. We already know that the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns is the Antichrist's end-time global empire. Again, that's who Israel has prostituted itself with. And since blasphemies are written all over it, that is, it's obviously an Antichrist system, Israel has no excuse for getting into league with it. Why is she wearing purple and scarlet clothing and beautiful jewellery made of gold and precious gems and pearls? Well, the colour purple has throughout history been a symbol of status and even royalty. Scarlet suggests wealth, as does the description of being adorned with precious jewellery. As the centre of the end-time empire, it is the centre of global wealth and commerce. And as we saw earlier, it's from this city that the false prophet will implement his global economic system. Why would she be the mother of all prostitutes and obscenities in the world? As if being a prostitute isn't bad enough, she is the source of all prostitution and obscenities in the world. That's because she is the source of the false religion and the focal point of the Antichrist one world government at this stage. The evil system rooted in ancient Babylon is now centered in the great city. She is the new figurative Babylon. Furthermore, the obscenities taking place in this city will be the worst the world has ever seen. Why is she drunk with the blood of God's holy people who are witnesses for Jesus? Because under the Antichrist rule, the one world order has been systematically killing the believers. The 2 witnesses were just the tip of the iceberg as far as that goes. So extreme was the persecution that God had to cut the time short, or none would have survived. Why does John say that he stared at her in complete amazement? Because this great city where the empire is headquartered is Jerusalem. This is supposed to be God's precious city, and it's completely under the control of his enemy, Satan. It's a shocking thing. But this is what the prostitute metaphor is all about. It represents an entity that once had a right relationship with God, but which doesn't now. It says that the scarlet beast and his 10 horns all hate the prostitute. They will strip her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her remains with fire. Satan, the Antichrist, and his coalition of 10 kings all actually hate Jerusalem. They hate it because it has always been the apple of God's eye. The attack on her refers back to the period of Jacob's trouble. In the times ahead, expect to see an increasing obsession amongst the world's leaders with Jerusalem. Perhaps even control of it being given to the United Nations or the Roman Catholic Church.